Today's video is to show you how to complete group documentation. This is the documentation that you write while working at one of our sites. First thing you're going to do is log in. Then you're going to clock in like you usually do. From there, you will notice there is a documentation tab. Please click on that. From there, it brings you to this client company. That is where you complete your group documentation. Again, this is the documentation you complete at the sites. This is not individual documentation, which is the documentation you complete for any hourly work or work in respite. Those are documented differently. From here, you are going to click on Service Entry by Client Group. And then you're going to select whichever site you are working at. And from here, you're going to clock in the people that you're going to be working with this shift. If someone is going to be gone their entire shift with family, then you don't need to clock them in. If they're on a trip or things like that, and you're not going to provide any services to them, don't worry about clocking those people in, but everybody else gets clocked in at the beginning of your shift. So you clock in, you clock the people that you're working with in. It does not matter if they are there right at that second. Say they're going to be back in 2 hours from work. You still clock them in if you're going to be working with them on your shift. After you've clocked everybody in, you can go ahead and log out and go about your shift. Go do the tasks that you need to do for the day. If you have some downtime and are able to enter some of your documentation, you're just going to log back in, click on that documentation tab, Service Entry by Client Group, select your group you're working with, and these drop-down arrows bring up the things that you need to document on your shift for each individual. These will vary slightly between each person because it's based on what each person needs and what services you provide for each person. So what's in their plan is going to be what's here that you're going to document on. You are going to document on the things that you have done. Once you have entered the things that you've done up to this point, if you're documenting throughout your shift, you're just going to hit save. And those things that you've documented on are now green. And the things you still need to document on are in yellow. Once you're done or run out of time for documentation during your shift, you can go ahead and log out. And then once again, when you have time, or if it's the end of your shift, you're going to go to documentation, Service Entry by Client Group, same thing we have been doing. Select your group and use that drop-down arrow to bring up the documentation that you need to complete. Some of the documentation is yes or no. Some of the documentation has a drop-down, and your supervisor can better explain the drop down, what each one means. It's really just a scale of how much assistance the person needed, or if you didn't need to offer it that day. Maybe you're an overnight and obviously you're not doing activities in the community, or if they decline to complete. So there's a scale to choose from. And then in the notes section, you're going to document the things that you did in relation to this particular activity. So you'll note every single box has its own notes section along with a drop down so that you can document. And then this bottom box, this is for anything that doesn't fall into the above boxes. So anything new, anything strange, anything out of the ordinary, anything that you feel you still needed to document on, but it doesn't fall into any of the categories above, that can go in this box below. And again, make sure you save when you're done. And then when you are completely done with all your notes and all these boxes are green and you have ended your shift, you're done, you're going home, please make sure that you just clock everybody out and then clock yourself out. You can also see up here, there is a date box. It does default to the current day. If you maybe need to go back a day or two to complete documentation that you've missed, it's the same process. You're going to just have to select your date and then you can log people in and out and do your documentation. Again, this should be rare, but we do understand that sometimes things happen and you do have to go back after the fact and complete your documentation. You can also go back and update your documentation if you need to add something after the fact. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact your supervisor